Hello everyone, and welcome back aboard the night train for what is hopefully the final part in this kind of unscheduled series looking back at the last 10 years of my channel and activities on YouTube. And it's taken me a hell of a lot longer than I thought it would to get through absolutely everything. We've been through Far Cry Yards, the TCC, Boko, the Magic Within, but now it's time to get into those, I guess, more niche things that I've done on the channel and modelling wise. Sort of from, in the last 5 years. I know for a lot of that, this channel was just completely dormant. I know that nothing was uploaded between, I think it was 2020 and the tail end of 2023, so a good chunk of that was inactive, but there were still lots of interesting things I was up to. Some of which, again, I don't think I've ever shown before on here, so it may be of interest to you, it may not be. Once again, I've got timestamps down in the description, so if you want to skirt past something to get to something you are interested in, then you're completely free to do that. So, today we've got the sort of handful of smaller layouts that I worked on, or dioramas. Some of them weren't fully fledged layouts. One of them was not actually railway related at all. There was also the layout that I started building before my current one that I just never finished, so I thought I would cover that a little bit. And then I think the biggest meat in terms of the platter I'm serving you today is going to be the Island Swansong. The, let's say, most ambitious and biggest Thomas fan story that I've ever produced. And yet that has done insanely well going back to it and seeing all of the comments and the enthusiasm. So I thought I'll give that some proper airtime as well. It's not a video, but I did share each chapter as I was releasing it on this channel, so it counts. I'm counting it. I rule. This is my channel. I will do what I like. Anyway, that said, the bit that's going to follow the Island Swansong is going to be the question and answer session. You submitted some questions to me. I've got answers. You're going to get them. And after that, I'm going to dabble a little bit in what I'm perhaps looking at doing in the future, thinking about, considering trying. And again, yeah, your opportunity to comment, let me know what you think of my ideas. If there's an idea I've not thought of, you can suggest it to me as well. So, yeah, today's, I guess, a little bit more recent back in time, a little bit of what's on your mind at the present, and then looking ahead. So this is less of a retrospective through and through, and more of a, I guess, let's say, cap on one period in time and transition into another. I finished uploading the Magic Within around the end of 2019, start of 2020. At that point, I was living in a tiny rented house, could not do anything more video-wise pretty much on that kind of scale. So I decided to focus a little bit more on the modelling side of things. In that rented accommodation, I did get a little bit frustrated with not being able to have any of my models out for their intended purpose or on display. And I know I've shared this on the channel before, but I'll just cover it very briefly. I started a little, let's just say I titled it the lockdown layout because we all know what 2020 was like. It wasn't fun for a lot of people. But yeah, I've shared this on the channel before, but here's a few behind the scenes shots. So it was just a very simple strip of narrow gauge track, standard gauge track, a little bit of road atop a cliff so that I could at least have those models out on display, even if I couldn't actually run the trains. So yeah, I've got some videos on this before, but again, just a couple of pictures. I mean, you've got Duke and Stepney out here, and there was a nice Perspex front, and I built it to size so it's slotted right into an existing shelving unit. And yeah, that lasted for a good couple of years. Until maybe, I think it was actually about last year that I won't say destroyed it, but cannibalized it for parts, I guess. So yeah, the fencing, the dry stone walling, some of the trees, some of the bushes were all incorporated into my new layout as well. The bus stop as well, I'm currently painting up and refreshing that for my current layout. But yeah, that was a nice little project. Oh, I nearly forgot about this. I also made a bookend for my bookshelf, to put it bluntly, but I decided to model it on Percy's Chocolate Crunch because I had a spare non-running Percy knocking around because I gave up on trying to make Lady for the Magic Within. So I decided to make a fun little diorama, covered this Percy in paint, aka chocolate, and yes, still have it upstairs. It's a fun little scene. You know, modelling trains can be done at any size, any scale, and yeah, this was me just going, I think, really small in terms of, well, surface area to work with. Right, and the layout that I mentioned, but I've not shown yet, that has nothing to do with trains, is I decided to have a little bit of an experiment with the Magnorail system. For those of you that don't know, this is essentially a laid sort of chain bed, and then there are plastic chains with magnets that are driven by a motor, kind of just like your normal DC circuit. But the idea is that you could put little tiny magnetic metal strips under road vehicles and they'd follow the track and the magnets in the track chain around a designated loop. So I decided that sounds like a fun thing to incorporate in any future permanent layouts I build. I could have the Thomas engines going one way, some of the road vehicles actually moving as well, not under their own power but via magnetism. So I decided to upcycle one of my old fish tanks and put a little Magnorail track in there as a sort of test bed for using a diorama. I tried to get too clever in the beginning and tried to have like 2 circuits with racing cars. That didn't really work, so I revised it to a singular circuit, and I could just have cars sort of tail chasing each other instead of overtaking in any capacity. And it all worked perfectly fine for a bit. I mean, it was a learning curve. It was always intended to be a learning curve. So I got some cards down, and everything ran fine. But once I painted it, the magnets would drop. So I don't know if paint plus card was too thick and I needed something thinner. The die-cast Oxford die-cast vehicles also just seemed to be generally too heavy to follow the chain. Their weight would drag the magnetic strip off of the magnets and they just lurch to a stop. So this only really worked with the cheaper plasticky HO scale vehicles that you got normally on the continent and in the States and that kind of thing. I did finish it, but it became more of a static display. Something that I might go back to in the future if I ever get the feeling and inspiration to. But it was a fun little experiment nonetheless. The coffee table is now long gone. I've got the diorama upstairs, but it's in a bit of a sorry state. So again, it's something that has started to be stripped for parts and cannibalised, and I think that's going to continue in the future. And then finally, we've got the layout that I started but never finished. I think this might be the only photo I've actually got of it. So yeah, already being in a tiny rented accommodation, I then had to move into an even smaller rented accommodation. But by that point, I was just completely fed up. I decided just work with what space I have and try and get somewhere to run some trains. And all I could manage, I think this was about 1 metre long by 2.5 foot, I think, was a very, very tiny first radius, borderline less than first radius in places, little loop and couple of sidings. It got to this stage, I got everything wired up, powered. I even got the station built. I sort of repainted and redetailed my Tomy Maithwaite station building prop from the series that I produced. And I built and painted up a whole platform for it, and then I got the brilliant news that I'd be able to move into somewhere bigger. So this was about as finished as this layout got. I then donated the entire board to a local railway club for them to turn into a tiny industrial setting or something, or to just cannibalise, again, for parts and track. I've been trying to get a big permanent layout off the ground for a while, and the one upstairs is now approaching the end of a very long road to achieving that goal. But yeah, this is what it started out as, a singular loop that was surprisingly navigable by even some of my Hornby and Bachmann Pacifics. So yeah, give things a first radius and you'd be surprised at what actually makes it round. I got all my trains out to test them all, and it was only a very small minority that couldn't do that loop. I was tempted to keep it as a sort of quote-unquote test track for reviewing, to send my new engines around to see how they would cope with the Ring of Fire, I think I called it in my mind, but again, that was just something that never came to be, and this is now in the hands of somebody else. So what else did I get up to in those intervening years? So one of the first things I did was I went back through all of my Thomas models after the huge slog of filming The Magic Within and gave them all a little bit of a refresh and refurb, because some of them got quite knocked up, not in the pregnancy way, but in the, you know what I mean, I'm over-explaining. They got bashed around quite a bit while filming and during house moves, so I thought I would, you know, freshen them up a bit. And you've seen the results of all of this in my most recent Thomas collection video. But yeah, I gave everything new faces, well, not everything, but most things new faces. I completely started my Troublesome Truck collection from scratch. New faces, new tools. I tried specifically for different eras as well. Again, I've explained this on the channel before, so keeping it brief. Yeah, built a couple of brand new models as well. Old Slow Coach was a brand new one. I did a number of changes to the Triang tooling that she's based on. Here's an example of brand new faces, splatter and dodge with movie accurate faces now rather than donated Tomy faces. God, I killed a lot of toys in my time. So yeah, I was not uploading, but I was still very, very much busy behind the scenes. I even branched out my modelling into other franchises, shall we say, and interests. So another famous TV show I'm sure you're aware of. Again, the toolings aren't exact. This was the closest I could find. Yeah, I did a couple of interesting things as well, branching out more from Railways and just Thomas, before I then had the time and space and an actual layout build to come back to YouTube with. Yeah, lots of modelling. It never stops. You're never finished, and I am far, far from finished. I'll probably die before I'm finished, but speaking of morbid, shall we move on to some of the more depressing stuff that I've at least shared on this channel? Yeah, I'm talking about the Island Swansong. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't read it, maybe go and read it before watching the rest of this video, because there will be spoilers. And yeah, spoilers in terms of character deaths, finds, relations, shall we say. I really, really had a lot of fun and employed my creative license to the fullest with writing that one. So without further ado, we'll jump straight into it. So for those of you that are still here, I know you know what the Island Swansong is if you've read it, but if you've decided to ignore my spoiler warning, then this is what it is. So the Island Swansong was a sort of 60,000 word mini novel that I wrote because I wanted to sort of try storytelling in the Thomas universe, but without the limitations of what could be done on screen. So I thought if I write a proper novel like that, I could use different POVs, I could use bigger sets, bigger ideas. That would just not be feasible to do in a YouTube video, or maybe even any kind of Thomas media. But in terms of its premise, this is a take on the Thomas universe that pulls from all of its iterations out there and just melds them into one melting pot of ideas and makes you question what actually happened and is real in terms of the Thomas stories and what isn't. I understand that probably doesn't make too much sense, so in terms of a synopsis, I'm going to try and summarise the best that I can from what I remember. I've not read this for a good number of years, so again, this is going to be some honest reactions to some of my old ideas. In this take on the island of Sodor, Sodor is real. The stories from the books and TV show are real recollections of events that happened. However, again, entertainment flares for publishers or television have been employed to sort of morph the reality of what happened slightly. The story picks up in the year I think I chose roughly about 2040, and Sodor and the stories of the engines have just disappeared from the public consciousness. Sodor, as a real entity, no one knows what happened to the island. Very few people have bothered to go and look, apart from one urban explorer who has decided to go and have a look and see what actually happened to the North Western Railway and what the cause of its demise and slip into obscurity was. It's told in first person. The explorer explores the remains of Sodor and tries to piece together the mystery of what happened to Thomas and his friends, as the synopsis says. Go read it on Wattpad if you haven't already. Somehow it's got over 174,000 views, which is mind-boggling. I was only expecting a fifth of that, if I was lucky, but people have just eaten this up. So I'm going to have a look through some of the chapters and see if there's any interesting tidbits in terms of what ideas I was playing with as I was writing this. The first one, and it's a question I've been asked repeatedly, is about adapting the story. And because I was trying to go for something that quote-unquote couldn't be adapted, thinking that big and broadly, I wrote this in such a fashion that it is unadaptable. The protagonist, the first-person POV, the explorer, is deliberately written without any gender or identifying factors. And that was a deliberate choice. That was so that any Thomas fan can imagine themselves as the central character doing the exploring and feel and find everything as if it was them. That's not something you can adapt. The minute you try and put an audio narration on this, or a visual representation of the main character, that's all gone. With that out the way, I think thematics. The time that this idea came to me is I was pretty sure I had no Thomas stories left in me. But then Big World, Big Adventures came to a close. Thomas and Friends, as the show that I knew from growing up, and again from when it improved drastically in the Brenner era of the CGI show, it was done. Big World, Big Adventures was finished. Thomas and Friends as a show was finished. And it got all these feelings of denial that this was happening, the grief that this was happening. I know this sounds really odd, but when you become attached to a franchise as old as this, you do get these feelings. And I decided to channel all of these into a story about dealing with loss, not quite death, but close to death, learning to let go and to say goodbye and to cherish the memories of things that you know and love, I guess, no matter how they end up. And you see a lot of this throughout the book itself. The main character goes looking for answers, gets angry and just lost in despair at what he actually finds, doesn't really believe the explanation on an emotional level, even though it does make sense on a logical level. And then even at the end, knowing all of this, it's that final knowing that you need to let go, and carrying those memories with you is what gets them through the rest of their days. And I think that's why it resonates with so many people, because there's so many feelings and thoughts in here that can be applied to a lot of different aspects that people encounter in life, good and bad. Yeah, this was one of those stories that once I had the idea, it just called to me so strongly that I knew I just had to write it. I just had to share it. And yet the Island Swansong was the final result. So the first chapter picks up kind of introducing our main urban explorer who recalls the tales of Sodor from when they were a kid, but in this, I guess, future modern world, everything has gone head over heels, I guess. The world has changed drastically, faster than anyone could have imagined, and everything has had to adapt or disappear, and Sodor, unfortunately, is one of those places that has disappeared. I used the various Island of Sodor maps as well to sort of map my way around the island and sort of to see where different places were at this point in, well, this future headcanon of mine, what could be discovered, what parts of the island were potentially not important to explore for the story. And I even used the fact there are multiple maps of Sodor for reference as a plot point, because you've got David Mitten's maps and notes from when he was producing the series, you've got the Railway series maps, you've got the less than lauded map of Sam Wilkinson from, I think it's about 2014, that just tried to cram everything onto Sodor. So I played with the idea that as we explored, we realised that some of those maps were right, some of them were wrong. None of them were 100% true to what Sodor actually was. And I think I sort of set this up by diving straight in with actual locations from the CGI series. Yeah, bit of an odd place to start, but we were going to be crossing from Barrow to Vickerstown. So I included the bridge, I included the station, claiming that basically the CGI show largely got that right. It was a very good set, so it felt wrong to just sort of wipe it. But then I did keep and travel to the Tidmouth Sheds from the model series as well, to start blending all of these different elements together. And that was where we were introduced to not just our first clues that something had happened that led to the demise of Sodor, but our first, I guess, lost engine. There are a lot of lost engines I tucked away around the island during the story, each with their own little tales to tell. And to sort of play with expectations and be a bit coy, the first engine we ran into was Rosie from the hit era. Very much playing with expectations from the outset, and I think that's really what hooked people. So yeah, we get to hear a little bit about the final days of Sodor from Rosie's mouth herself, and get a few little hints as to what those end days looked like. Who got away from Sodor into preservation or onto the mainland? Who do we potentially need to still look for? And what actually was passed around by word of mouth, because I don't think everyone who was there actually ever got the full picture. I think this had a very strong grounding in terms of really kickstarting this story. And from, where did we go? From Vickerstown, we went back along the main lines. Oh, we weren't done in Vickerstown. We went straight to the diesel works. And this is where I began playing with expectations more. I'm going to say that a lot, but yeah, the diesel works, again, I said in the Magic Within retrospective, I didn't like the CGI diesel works set, so I invented a new one. Yeah, I said this was much more in line with what we saw in the book illustrations. And then I decided to throw another curveball into the mix by having an engine hidden here, just like at the Vickerstown Roundhouse, but having it be an engine that was never seen in any form in the Thomas stories. I thought that would be a really fun and great way to throw people off of any scent they might get while reading through the story, even though it was only chapter 3. So I chose for this a Class 23 Baby Deltic, because, you know, something a little bit different. The CGI and model series had a lot of shunters, we had very few medium or large diesels, so I decided, why not use one? So we had a two-tone green diesel numbered D4, who I decided to make female as well, a little bit of variety, and she was named Abigail. And we again got to hear a little bit more about Abigail's life at the diesel works and on Sodor, which is something completely brand new. We find out that Dart was real, Den not so much. And this is where I introduced an element into the story that I thought would be really fun, but this was having the engines give recollections themselves, written in the style of the Railway series stories. So Abigail gave one about accidentally fooling a film publicist. That was a fun one, pairing Gordon up with a diesel and the idea of, I'm going to use the phrase again, subverting expectations. So that was, I think, a really good way to pay homage to the original books in what is a very, very different style of writing. As if it wasn't fun enough already, our urban explorer actually got Abigail moving to travel down the line a little bit and go on a bit of an adventure. Because, you know, this is, at its core, a story about trains. So having a few train rides in there just sort of felt essential. We see a lot more of Sodor, the current state of things, both in the countryside and various towns. A couple of dangerous bits as well, seeing that, again, maps don't line up quite as they're expecting. At the end of the day, though, we get to Norranby village out on this little excursion, and that's where we meet Arthur. And we're able to fulfil a little bit of a final wish for Abigail and Arthur to, you know, tie a little bow on some things. This entire book was about putting a nice, neat book stop on, I guess, my relationship with Thomas storytelling, because after the end of the series, well, after the start of Wubba, to be honest, it was never going to be the same. Found yet more clues as to what was actually going on Sodor. Statements, newspaper cuttings, things like that. And I felt this was the right spot to just pay a little homage to the Skarloey engines as well, and play on the whole Sleeping Beauties idea that is sort of we've seen already twice. We find, holed up in a shed, we've got Sir Handel and Peter Sam. And again, a little bit of chatting about the folklore and legends of Sodor and whether they could feed into what's happened. And I tied all of the legends of the hills together, so the Man in the Hills, Proteus's magic lamp, all of that into some sort of cohesive, I guess, rural myth and legend about those lines to sort of show that there is an undercurrent of supernatural life that is, or was at least, believed on Sodor in its heyday. Or the Old Warrior as well. Yeah. And the Iron Bridge, yeah. God, I really pulled everything together, didn't I? The story, I tried to keep everything moving and not trying to hang around in any one location for too long. So we had an interesting segment with trying to cross the Big Dipper, which, like the Magic Railroad, had partially collapsed. I thought that'd be a nice callback and sort of trying to fold the Magic Railroad a little bit into the what if canon as well. And then chapter 10, there was 31 chapters, but chapter 10 was where things started to get really interesting. We cross the Big Dipper and we make it to the smelters. If you've seen The Magic Within, you know I love me a good smelters set inclusion. And this was where we started to see the fate of some of those engines that hadn't made it. So there were body shells from, I think, who bit the bullet. Bear was gone, Derek was gone, Hank was gone. It was odd that I included Hank, given he was never really within Sodor's loading gauge. Maybe it was an S-160 situation, but yeah, maybe I shouldn't have included him, I don't know. Murdoch as well, I said was gone. Ah, yeah, and then I recycled my horrendous one Scottish twin's gone, the other isn't idea, by having only one shell of a singular Scottish twin in the scrapyard. Okay, I did make use of that idea, and I think it plays a lot better here than having one of them yeeted off a viaduct by an evil diesel. And then I played with expectations yet again by introducing Diesel 10 as real. I know that that was not something that people would want in a more, I guess, realism-based story, but I put a nice twist on Diesel 10 yet again. in that his name was Tennant. He never had a pinchy on his roof, but in his final resting place, he did have the grabber pinning him to the rails as the equipment at the smelter started to fail. Oh, and the cat is back. Hello? Yeah, Reef is back again. Yeah, and then next chapter, The Truth About 10, is Yes? Are you done? But yes, the next chapter, The Truth About 10, was all about life on Sodor from Diesel 10's perspective. Reef, up! What was that? Reef, up! Up! Meow! Got a blanket. You coming up? There we go. We've got a cat. Say hello. Say hello. It's very wet. It's raining. Settle down. There we go. Anyway, yes. So we have Diesel 10's life, or Tennant's life, from his perspective. He was never a malicious steam engine scrapper, even though the show and that tried to make out like he was. But in the end, that is what he actually had to become as things on Sodor deteriorated. I had fun playing with the set designs and the characters who we thought we knew. The character choices as well, I tried to keep everyone on their toes, because Caroline, of all characters, pops up in the next chapter, and fun little Easter egg I included was that her driver was a Dalby. What are you doing? Sorry, cat antics. But yeah, Caroline's able to give a couple of more little nuggets of information about what life was like from a human's perspective in terms of what her driver would say and tell her. But she was, in the end, just left abandoned in a garage. And thankfully, our urban explorer managed to get her going for a little bit to cover a bit more ground, a bit more quickly, because otherwise the story would have just gone on for ages. We then ended up in Sudbury, towards Edward's branch line, to try and go through the Sodor Island records. That was a very logical move on our character's part. So yeah, I tried to just not make it a random meandering across Sodor. There was rhyme and reason with everything that was happening in the story. And yeah, the Sodor archives gave a lot of useful insights, but at the very end, there was no records of what actually happened in those final days. So again, a little bit more of slice of life kind of stuff going on, trying to find food and shelter, and a storm hits as well. That was one of the things I wanted to include. Sodor had a lot of storms in the TV show, and with the setting this was set in, they would have been more frequent. Oh, yeah, and Caroline as well. Oh, that was a twist of the heart, well, a twist of a knife in her heart, wasn't it? Going back to find Caroline had actually gone in the storm. And just the gut punch of one of the characters actually suffering the demise at their own hands. And just the despair that spiralled from that. I thought this was the portion of the coming to terms with grief where we've had denial, we've had anger, and this is just the despair and the hopelessness that comes with it at about halfway in the story. Leading into the next chapter, aptly titled Feeling Blue. I think at this point we were trying to find a boat off of Sodor because our explorer had just had enough, but couldn't see anything at the docks, so heading back into the inland areas of Sodor we had to go. And yeah, we eventually get to Crosby. Was it Crosby? Yeah, we got to Crosby, and that's where we discovered that Edward was still around. The very first engine from the very first story of the Railway series. Still around even after Sodor itself has faded and gone. And then we get another Railway series inspired story about Edward during the Sodor's darkest years, so thematically leading into where we are in the story, the Second World War, and what that was like for the engines and people of Sodor. I know that's an era that Audrey never ever dared want to touch because it was something he lived through. I was hesitant to include something in here, but in terms of the wider narrative I was going for, it served an important purpose in re-inspiring our main protagonist to carry on. So, Edward shows great resolve and courage during the war, despite air raids and that going on around him, using a snowplow as well to clear rubble off the line. It was, giving Edward a very shiny starring role in a story, which I think, for something that is as much of an homage as this, was definitely needed. And yeah, Wind in the Sail, the next chapter, shows that it worked, and our character is back onto trying to solve the final days. So yeah, we carry on pushing through Sodor. We find the suspension bridge, a little bit more food, and the windmill. We find the remains of the windmill and realise that Thomas's branch line, everything from those famous shots, is now decrepit and long gone. Just going through it like this, I don't think I'm doing the story justice, so please, if you haven't already, go and give it a read. I will put a link in the description. Yeah, we get to Eldsbridge and we start to see signs of Thomas's life in terms of the branch line that he ran. And then we also get to Knapford Junction. Not Big Knapford from the TV show, it's the Knapford Junction from the Railway series that we actually find, which is nowhere near as big or grand. So we head straight on to Tidmouth, which is the big station on Sodor, not Knapford like the TV show. And this is where those canopies come in that we're so familiar with at Tidmouth, which is just in a right state. We find the Fat Controller's office with the telephone, which has been long silent. We find his diary as well, that gives a couple of insights into some of the other fates of characters as well. So we've got some fates for engines that were sold or lost, as well as a little bit of a view into the Fat Controller's mind at this point in time, how he was feeling, a broken man pretty much. And then we end up at Tidmouth Sheds, that very famous location in the TV show. Of course it had to have a real life prototype and location. And this is where we find Gordon, who looks a little bit different from how we come to know him, but I won't spoil it too much. We get a story, another Railway series style story from Gordon's point of view, about the wear and tear that he was feeling at the very end of Sodor's, at the very end of the North Western Railway's run, and what it meant for him when he finally broke and it looked like he wasn't going to be repaired. And there was a very sad outcome to this, which was not Gordon's demise, but Henry's instead. And I know that's the bit that really got people the most. What happens to Henry in this? Because of the 8 famous engines, I think Henry is the only one that doesn't make it. And then we get a second part to that story, which is about the end of Henry. And here we are, chapter 20, we're now 2/3 of the way through. Yeah, the sadder story of Henry is what we've just encountered. And that is when the reality hits home that not all of those classic characters have made it. And we actually go and find Boko is still around as well, because, you know, if the Boko story I did wasn't enough of a guess, I really liked Boko, so of course I was going to work him in here in some fashion. And poor Boko, one of the things he's most worried about is how Edward is, which gives him a little bit of closure that he was looking for. And this is where disaster strikes, because our explorer sees a boat, a chance to get off the island, but in doing so, part of the cliffs collapse that they're on, and yeah, the injury. They get injured, a broken leg, and we wake up again with a broken leg, but this time we are actually on the boat. The person saw us, they've gone to pick us up, they've done first aid. Yeah, there's something about this character, this woman that's rescued us, that doesn't add up. So now we've got a second mystery to solve, and we learn her name is Anne, and we learn that she was actually coming to the island as well, so many, many more questions quite late into the story's game. And we find out she has a car for getting around as well. And we actually land, I think, we come into Aldborough, don't we? And we get to see Duck again. And Duck is familiar with this woman. They knew each other. So who is she? I didn't want to give the answers away too quickly, so yeah, we spend a little bit of time with her. We head towards Ulstead next. She remains very tight-lipped when we try and ask questions, and stay overnight in a big abandoned stately home. And we hear a little bit about her father and how he's in care now, and that she's using captured carbon in the form of biochar to heat water, power stoves, generate electricity, that kind of thing. I was bleeding in a little bit of futuristic present cutting-edge technology in here, because biochar is still very much an up-and-coming industry. But yeah, we're very much now looked after, but she ends with the bombshell of we're going to see the men in the hills. So we're going right back to what we spoke about with the the narrow gauge engines. Who are the men in the hills? Another burning question. And then this is where I took the opportunity to explore a little bit of Sodor that we didn't really see much at all. And I relied on the maps for this quite heavily. So you had the Rock Bridge, we saw Culdee Fell, a little bit of Peel Godred as well, and a nice little drive through the island. Bridge of Rocks, that was it, not Rock Bridge. All the way up towards Sodor's north coast in the hills. We pass some cottages, pick some flowers, and this is where I think the themes really start to hit home. We stop off at one of these random cottages, and we find atop this cliff there are gravestones. So the men in the hills are not alive, they're dead. And they're actually the Hats, the previous Fat controllers, laid to rest on the islands they called home. Anne is a Hat, and she knows everything that happened because she was so close to what the Hats were doing at that point in time. So we get the answers we were looking for, in which that it wasn't anything cataclysmic or explosive that brought Sodor down. It was the mundane, the many, many small individual problems that all just grew and grew and interacted and piled on top of each other until the weight couldn't be taken. There was no catalyst, there was just a lot of slow burning problems that happened over the last 100 years. So this was very much not so much as a post-apocalyptic disaster setting. This was, I guess you'd call it more, it has more in common with the slow death of a civilization like the Aztecs or the Mayans, and just how somewhere thriving can suddenly, within a short historical period, suddenly not be. And that is a sobering thing to remember, particularly with the world around us today. So we get a little bit of a recital of the timeline of what was going on through Sodor, throughout the years, throughout the decades, the rise of the Railway series, the TV show, but all the things that were happening in real life, in tandem and alongside that. A lot of these as well are all based on real world issues and problems that the UK and other countries are facing today. So this is serving as a little bit of a, shall we say, premonition of what could come to pass if society and those in power do not address these things. So I think that's when it really hits, particularly as it refers to real-world events. You've got the global recession in here as well. That would have impacted Sodor. So that was quite interesting to think about. We find out what happened, what pushed everything over the edge. Death by 1,000 cuts. And then we hear about the state of Stephen Hatz. And James, we found out, didn't go to the Isle of Man. He actually got moved onto the Peel-Godred line, and that became his branch line. So he's probably still there somewhere. Oliver survived to get a few more insights into the fates of some of the other characters. A little bit of a nod to sentience of things here. Little throwbacks to the magic within. And then Anne takes us to where I think everyone, since they started reading the story, wanted to go, and that is to Farquhar. Which looks exactly like, not the TV show, not the CGI series, not the railway series, but it looks directly like Audrey's model railway. The man himself had been there, he studied it, and he modelled it perfectly. I thought that was a nice little nod into, you know, the real Farquhar that we can go and see at the Talaclin. And then we finally meet him, we finally see Thomas. The last few chapters, and we get the engine that everyone's come to know and love. Anne comes to take care of him, and Percy and Toby, who are stabled with him over the years as well. But Toby is in quite a poor state due to wood termites. Still alive and kicking though. Yeah, so Anne's making the trips back and forth from Sodor to try and fulfill wishes and at least keep Thomas in good nick. We have a little bit of fun banter between the three Farquhar engines. And we get one final Railway Series style story about the Farquhar engines as well, to bookend that portion of this, well, I guess novel, about Thomas mastering his own branch line, just to put a little nicer ribbon on that. And for the big climax, we decide to take Thomas out for one final run back to the harbour at Knapford. Because, you know, giving that tank engine just one last run back down to see Annie and Clarabelle just felt like the perfect way to, you know, to shine a light on Sodor's legacy one last time. So one last ride. One last obstacle as well. Thomas has to charge through a tree that's crossing the line. But they make it to the harbour and reunite him with Annie and Clarabelle, who, you know, he used day in and day out pretty much. And that is when we have to say our final goodbyes, not just to Sodor, but to Thomas himself. And we sail away with Anne, knowing what happened, what's left, and wondering what time will do to what remains. And then there's just a little epilogue at the end. It's our urban explorer, now elderly, in a care home, wondering if any of what we've just read actually happened. But when they hear that theme music on the TV, everything just comes rushing back. They can close their eyes, they're there, it's with them forever, no matter what's changed and been lost. And it ends. So yeah, that's the Island Swansong. I think I said a lot more about that than I planned, which seems to be a fashion with me with these videos. But yeah, that was one hell of a Thomas story that I put together and pulled off. That is probably the best thing I have ever written and may ever write. I am still writing my own other things not related to Thomas, but God, I had such a rich universe to springboard off to structure this kind of story around. I think that's why it just hit so hard with so many people. And I know it does because I found the Reddit pages. Yes, people have set up Reddit discussions to chat about this story. So I'm going to go through those now. If you're one of the people that's posted on there, you might have something read out, just be warned. So let's go have a nose. There we go, we've got 1, 2, 3 Reddit threads, 4, 5. Jesus Christ. There's a good number of Reddit pages on this. Good God. One of the best Thomas fan things. Almost had me up overnight because I just had to... Yeah, Diesel 10 and the story of Henry were racking. Yeah. Peak Thomas fan project. Oh. Someone crying. Henry went out like a Chad. Yeah. It gave me false hope for Wattpad. Plenty rough 5135. I'm so sorry. I did not mean to do that. Admittedly, I don't read Wattpad myself. This was just a platform for me to publish it. But I've heard enough things to know there's a lot of not great stuff on there. It was phenomenal in all caps, thank you. One of the best stories I have ever read. I mean, you can think it's good, but is it that good? Henry's sacrifice made me cry. Caroline was sad, yeah. Too depressing to read. Okay, I can understand that depending on your headspace. Very saddening at times, yeah. Some criticisms here and there, but still really good. Yeah, there are, that is fair. I picked up on a couple. How do so many people not know about this? I don't know, but if you find someone that doesn't, do let them know. I mean, it's up there. It's been up there for a couple of years now. I didn't know there were so many Reddit threads on this. 35 out of 10. 11 out of 10. 1,000 out of... What scalings are you people using? Oh yeah, a question here about why I won't allow adaptation. Someone screenshotted my old pinned Twitter post. I've explained why already. Very, very dark and very, very interesting. Life is often both of those things when we least expect it. Holy hell, it's been a ride so far. It was, even just going back to it. And I knew what was coming. Vaguely, anyway. No. Someone's posted another Wattpad story. That's one that my friend Pat found in uni when they were looking at Thomas fan fiction for the first time. We are not mentioning that one on here. But yes, anyway, that's the Island Swansong, which is definitely the Thomas story I'm most proud of. One that is never going to be adapted unless I just... Should I just do my own audiobook? I don't know. How can you have a gender-neutral sounding narrator? I think that is what I would need, but I don't know myself what that sounds like. So if you've got any ideas, let me know. That might open up one possibility there. So, moving on to the next section of the video, it is finally time for me to get onto that question and answer session that I promised. I appreciate you've seen a lot of me on the screen already so far, so for this section I'm going to run a couple of trains, or at least footage of a couple of trains over this. Those that have been most important to me over the last 10 plus years, those that are most associated and important to the success of this channel, and just, yeah, show a few models. What have I got? Oh, a page and a half of questions. Let's see. Tank Engine Media, your question was, what is your favourite or least favourite episodes to work on for the TCC, Thomas Creator Collective? God, there were so many, and there's so many that I must admit I've not watched in a long time. I think the one that I remember most vividly, I can't say that I worked on it, but it involved one of my models, so I guess so, is Brother Bother, a standalone episode. That featured my Flying Scotsman model, and I remember that one vividly because they never told me that they were going to have him on a collapsing bridge. So I had a momentary heart attack when I saw that for the first time when it aired. It was one of those, what the F are you doing, disbelief questions. Thankfully, the model was completely fine. They'd taken precautions to make sure it wasn't destroyed like Yongbao. But of the ones that I worked on directly, I think my favourite one was Thomas and the Really Useful Crew. There was a scene with the pack doing some demolition work. I got to film that at home. They bought some pack members for me. That's why I ended up with Byron and Oliver. And they gave me the task of having to model Oliver with a wrecking ball, destroying a wall. So I had to paint up a Christmas bauble, fill it with like liquid weights, I think they were called, attach that to Oliver and film him destroying a wall. And that was great fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed that. Sodor's Finest as well was a good one, but I wouldn't call that a favourite of mine. Least favourite, that's an obvious one. It was Thomas and the Superstation. That was when we were fully mandated to just start basically marketing new products. Everything in that had to revolve around the Superstation. The Superstation looked shit. Oh god, it was just cheap Mattel crap sold for stupid premium prices. Very difficult to do anything with it, but they tried to find a way. I don't think it worked. And for me, that was the start of when things started going wrong and too far gone with what the TCC had become. Everyone tried to do their best with the cards they were dealt, but that one just... Yeah, I'll stop there, but those are my answers, so enjoy those. And Tank Engine Media asked a second question as well, and that was the personal favourite episode that I made for my series. And for Farquhar Yards, that would definitely be Duck and Henry's Dark Ride, for the reasons I've already said. I always wanted to do a Series 5-esque Halloween spooky episode, and I think that one was just the perfect execution that I hoped for. The Magic Within, my favourite episode from that series, I'd say has to be episode 8, Heat and Pressure. That was fun, particularly with all the action that took place in the smelters. Character arcs and motivations all coming together, just the music, the atmosphere. Yeah, that one is probably the peak of that series, I think, and I think the views that those episodes have got bears that out. And Tank Engine Media 3 has also asked a third question. What are your favourite non-Thomas shows? Oof, there's quite a variety. So, one of the ones that is definitely up there, and my partner is going to kill me if I don't include this one because I spent over £1,000 on a screen-used prop. That is Primeval, which was a 2000 sci-fi show about rips in the fabric of time and space that allow prehistoric creatures into the present day. Lots of timeline shenanigans, lots of dinosaurs and prehistoric creatures and futuristic monsters. I just love it. If you've not seen it, just go and watch it. It takes itself a little bit seriously, but not too much. It's a little bit campy, but not too much. Had its own production issues behind the scenes, but still one of those shows that resonates with me so much as an adult. Top Gear as well. If you grew up in the 2000s, Top Gear was essential Sunday night viewing. Three fools and their shenanigans. Yeah. What more do I need to say? It was just stupid, boyish, adolescent nonsense, but sometimes that's what you need in life, isn't it? Just watching other people be idiots and be entertaining. And again, yeah, I'm kind of interested in cars as well. That helps. So, Top Gear. Again, shame it ended how it did, kind of like Thomas. But, those were good times. A couple of different choices now. Was really into Beyblade as a kid. Loved the original Beyblade series run, still give it a rewatch at least every year. Still got all my original Beyblades, and I've got all the new homage ones as well that are just great fun to play with, so that is definitely up there. Another animated show, we've got Metalocalypse. That is just incredibly brutal, dark and violent, and thoroughly in line with my music tastes. If you're of a young age and you're watching this video, that's one I do not recommend unless you meet the required age ratings. It is ranked as one of the most violent cartoons of all time. But yeah, that is another great watch for me, personally. And finally, moving off into docuseries, we've got River Monsters. Ate that show up when it aired. It informed the dissertations that I wrote at university. I've got 2 fish tanks at home and a turtle. So, yeah, Jeremy Wade, his adventures, really influential to me during the same years that I was producing this YouTube channel pretty much, and a couple before. So, yeah, bit of a variety for you. We've got sci-fi, car nonsense, well, basically product placement anime, violent cartoons, and true crime fish documentaries. I'm a really difficult person to get on with because I have such weird interests, but there you go. Right, and we have, let's see, 3 questions again, this time from the Sudrian 016, or 016. Are there any other magazine stories you wish to see in the TV series of Thomas and Friends? I'm assuming this question is a follow-on from my 10-ish stories from the Railway series that should have been adapted into the classic series of the TV show. All I'm going to say on this one is I'm not going to answer you, as I have videos on this very subject in the pipeline. So all I can say is watch this space and expect a very lengthy video answer in the future. The second question is, what was your reaction to the 1983 Down the Mine pilots? And they were a little mixed, if I'm honest. Because it was cut back together from reels and with a whole new soundtrack made for it, it felt to me like a what could have been pilot rather than what was originally shown to get the show greenlit. To use a related analogy, it was kind of like a new build steam engine that utilised parts available from the original where available. So I think it was an interesting exercise, but I don't see it as the true pilot of the show. I'd like to see all of the reels containing the footage shot though, as I think that is about as authentic as we can probably get without the guesstimation of repiecing the pilot back together. So yeah, a nice find and release, but not quite what I think I was hoping for. And the third question is, are there any underrated real steam locomotives that no one talks about? When I first saw this question, one engine instantly sprang to mind. Columbine. It's the only surviving engine that was built for the Grand Junction Railway, and yet it gets all but forgotten about when Era 1 engines, railways and models are discussed, it seems. Reef is back again. Hello, son. Do you go outside deliberately to get wet and then come and dry yourself on my lap? Anyway. Yeah, Columbine. The Grand Junction was the world's first trunk route and became the backbone of the London and North Western Railway, which became the biggest company in the world in its heyday. So, yeah, I think Columbine deserves more love, coverage, and for her tender to finally be restored and repaired with the engine. Currently, the engine is the only part on display at the... No, I'm recording. Don't argue with me. Yes, currently only the engine is on display at the Science Museum in London. And we have 3 questions again from Tank Engine 97. What video are you most proud of? Well, it's going to be a toss-up between the 2 I've already mentioned, but I think I'm going to go with Duck and Henry's Dark Ride. Yeah, definitely that one. Heat and Pressure is let down a little bit by some of the sets, but Duck and Henry's Dark Ride nailed them, I think, especially in the nighttime scenes. Question number 2. Seeing as you've done that Railway series book narration of Wild Engines, do you plan on doing more of those in the future? That was more of a one-off that spun out of my answering of the question I posed in my related video about what I would add to the Railway series if given the chance. It was an anniversary special, but I'd say never. I may choose to revisit in the future if the right inspiration strikes. I mean, I've already said I was tempted to adapt those unmade Farquhar Yards scripts into an audiobook. Maybe also the Island Swansong if I can find a way to do it that I'm happy with. So potentially, there's potential there, but not at this moment in time. And question number 3. I noticed in the thumbnail of this video that there's a purple engine with the Night Train logo on the tender. Will this become a future model project? And the short answer to that is no. That was just a commercially available free engine vector to use as the basis for a logo. I tweaked the colours to my liking, but it's not a future model project I have in mind. It is a school class locomotive though, so if I change my mind, hopefully it should be a very simple repaint job. Next we have a question from Harrison Allen 651. What are your predictions for the upcoming 2026 Thomas series and the upcoming Mark Forster live action movie? The short answer is I don't have many predictions of the substance that you're probably hoping for. Until we see official footage, logos or marketing that confirm these are happening, I'm still very much seeing them as hypothetical and as nothing more than good intentions. People are saying the show will just revert back to the CGI era, but I think they're wrong. All the voice actors, the animators and the other creative staff will have moved on to new projects and potentially be tied into various different contracts now. If or when something does come around, I expect it will feature a new team, showrunner, a new style and a new plan. I could see another 2D show taking a more realistic approach to the art style. Not quite to the same extent of the Railway series illustrations, but hopefully better than All Engines Go. I also see them wanting to take the stories and characters in their own direction, but perhaps with the occasional homage. As for the movie, I remember feverishly checking for updates on the Adventures of Thomas movie when that first got a release date. Fool me once, but I'm not going to get my hopes up like that again. When we get a trailer, I'll let myself get invested and theorise. But given the current state of the franchise, I think the chances of a live-action theatrical movie happening are on a knife edge. That's my rather pragmatic take on it all. It's been 5 years already and we've seen and heard next to nothing about it, pretty much. And finally, we have 2 questions from the sus zoologist. Why are you sus, I wonder? Anyway, question number 1. What new models are you hoping get announced next year? Or what's on your wish list / to your taste? We don't really see this outside of collection videos or reviews, both of which seem very Steam heavy. Hello? It is very Steam heavy, mostly because there's just not many diesel engines I feel a personal attachment to. And the multiple units on the network I would get haven't been released in model form. Here's a few quick picks from my wishlist though. For Steam, I'd love to see Fenchurch as currently preserved. Hornby or Dapol could do that one justice with their recent Terrier toolings. For narrow gauge, I'd love to see Dolgok and would be surprised if Bachmann weren't already adapting their Rheneas tooling to do this. Otherwise, I'd love to see Tom Roltz, but that one is the least likely of all the Talaclin engines to see in a ready-to-run form, I think. You know what, I'm actually going to stop there because I think I'm going to do a video on this topic maybe early next year. So check back in with the channel and you'll get a fuller list then, probably a top 10. As there are quite a number of things that I want, but none of them have come to fruition yet. And your second question is, oh, and when can we see Reef the Railway Cat again? We've seen him a number of times already this video. And he is on my lap. There he is. Say hello. Say hello, Reef. No? No, he's enjoying strokes. Again, he's very wet. And that is the end of the question and answer session. So thank you to everyone that submitted questions. If you got more, but you didn't know you had the opportunity to ask them, ask below in the comments and I will do my best to provide an answer. So yeah, we've come to an end of looking at the last 10 years back in time. But what about going forwards in time? I know a lot of other people have spoken about this already, but the YouTube algorithm is a fickle beast. I've had a number of things that it just seems like it refuses to pick up, and then other things do shockingly well out of the blue. So I think it's the longer videos it likes. Anything shorter than 10 minutes, it just leaves for dead. Maybe even less than 15 minutes, it just leaves for dead. So I'm going to have to look at making a bit more of long-form content. So maybe not necessarily less content, about the same amount of time and effort, but just truncated into fewer videos, I think. I've got a couple of ideas knocking around as well in terms of model or Thomas-related videos. But I think I am going to have to shift the focus of this channel a little bit somewhat. A lot of the videos that I've done as of late are either reviews or series of me modelling the layouts. The layout is very nearly done now, and I'm sure people aren't going to tune in for videos of me just sticking random details all over the board. So I think in terms of layout build videos, there's not going to be many more of those unless I can do a bulk update of many areas in a single video. Which leaves me in a little bit of a sticky position. I can't just rely on reviews. New products are becoming delayed randomly or just dropping off the face of the earth. Yeah, I'm thinking about you, Dapol Auto Coach. You were due in 2023, start of 2023. I think what this has shown me, these last few videos, is I can still dive into a lot of stuff to do with Thomas and at least chat about it, and kind of want to chat about it. And while I don't have the scope for producing or writing and producing Thomas episodes or videos, I can still do videos on aspects of the storytelling of Thomas. I have a number of ideas, let's say, about what to do. I've already hinted, I've got videos in the works to do with the magazine stories. I've got a couple of hangover videos from this year to do with the 80th... Hello. Goodbye. To do with the 80th anniversary, to do with the TV show directly, or some things to do with about Audrey's models as well. So I've got a number of, I guess, more Thomas related bits that I think I'm going to start producing. There's also a couple of other, I'd say, questions that I've thought of to do with Thomas, such as... Now, I'm not going to give spoilers, forget that. I've just got a couple of questions that I'm going to pose in videos about Thomas. So, yeah, I did a poll on what people want to see from the channel. Thomas stuff came out far and ahead before everything else. So I think I'm going to lean a little bit more heavily into that, but a little bit more into the discussion territory rather than make any more episodes. I'm still very much in the camp of, I don't want to do that. And I don't have the means to do that as well, more importantly. Thinking about the storytelling aspects of Thomas, I was going to... I'll field it now and you can let me know what you think. I was going to perhaps be a bit more imaginative, suffer a little bit as well, but I was going to dive back into the hit era seasons to look for the hidden potential in those episodes that were not abhorrent, but were only okay. Those that had good ideas but didn't execute them brilliantly, because I think those would be interesting to analyse and to rewrite, to see just how much potential was missed. I know people have done rewrites of entire specials in the past, but I think there are a number of episodes out there that could benefit from a similar breakdown, treatment and rebuilding. If you want to see a series of me breaking down iffy Thomas episodes and improving them plot-wise, character-wise, let me know, because I might be able to turn that into a fully fledged video essay series, so to speak. Yeah, that's my main angle that I'm going to aim for. There's going to be less layout building stuff, but there's still going to be the reviews. I've still got stuff on order that I'm going to get out and play with and show off and tell you what I think, as well as more Thomas discussion stuff. That seems to go down really well, so there is more of it on the way. Beyond that, I don't know. I have ideas as well for different layouts that I would perhaps like to build one day. So we'll see if I find the space and get round to making them. Definitely a lot coming in the future, and if you aren't subscribed yet and you've just been waiting to get a little bit of a flavour of what I'm going to do in the next year or two, consider subscribing now, particularly if you're 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out the door in terms of being here for the Thomas stuff, because there is going to be more of it. New engine reviews, new Thomas stuff, a couple of layout updates. That is what I can promise at this moment. I'm going to have more ideas, I'm sure. And if you have your own ideas for what you'd like to see me do, then make sure that you put those in the comments and I can take notes of them and see how feasible they are. I'd also like to see more channel growth as well. We've just hit 7,000 subscribers in the last month or two. I've already got my eye on 8, 9, maybe even 10. So if you've not subscribed already, do. And also let me know what you'd like to see me do in order to get to those numbers. If we get to 8,000, I'm tempted to make Abigail from the island Swansong. Make a custom engine, another custom Thomas engine of my own original character. But only if I hit 8,000. What about 9,000? Do I do that to myself? Do I force myself to watch all of Big World Big Adventures if I hit 9,000 subscribers? And give my thoughts? That sounds horrific. No, because then for 10,000 subscribers you're going to make me watch all engines go and watch me just despair and scream into the void around me. That's bad ideas, but now I've put them out here, so I'm going to suffer. Please don't make me hit 10,000 subscribers. And please don't accuse me of reverse psychology either. That is not what I'm going for. I do not want to watch all engines go. Please. Anyway. Ooh, you're a new cat. That's not our cat, that's someone else's. Anyway, that is, I think, about time to wrap up this final 10th anniversary video. Thank you so much for watching one of these, all of these, however many you've wanted to watch, for supporting the channel in any capacity from 1 minute to 10 years. And I hope to see you back here checking out my videos again in the future. Hopefully they're to your liking. If not, let me know what is to your liking. And I'll see what I can do. But until the next one, thank you so much for watching. And here's to a good another year, 2 years, 5 years, we'll see. But yeah, I'm rambling now. Take care and I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.